Good afternoon, members. If we can all have your attention. We're a few minutes late, so apologies for that. Thank you. Right. Welcome to this Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Michael Holt and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. If you are attending the meeting to speak persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones and laptops are on silent. Additionally, we'll be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to do so, please inform the committee clerk. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via the fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exit at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts. Do not re-enter the building until told it's safe to do so. We have the following people in attendance this afternoon, and this isn't an exclusive list, but I will mention some names. We've got Councillor Deborah Saw, Cabinet Member for People and Place. We've got Councillor Paul Clover, who's the lead signatory for the call-in, and also with him is Councillor Isabel Rees. We've got Officers Mark Ems, Director of Operations, Matt Smith, Park and Services Officer, or Manager, I should say, and Jack Burton, Finance Business Partner. Got the Monitoring Officer to my right, Tom Barker, and our Lead Officer for Overview and Scrutiny is Alyssa Norman, to my left. Can I move to the agenda, please? Do we have any apologies for absence and substitutions?
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies this afternoon.
Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary or other registrable or non-registrable interest by members. Are there any to declare? No. I'll move on to item 3, which is paper number BOS/25/10 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of December 2025. Could I ask members, are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? And if not, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Wyman and Councillor Jameson. As a seconder. The lead officer will now conduct the vote on mod.gov, or do you want to go by show of hands? We'll do a show of hands, members. So all those in favour?
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting of the 15th December have been confirmed. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
And item 5, questions by the public.
None received, Chair.
Number 6 is questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
Okay. Right, we'll get to the main part of the meeting as such. Item 7 is BOS/25/11, call-in protocol. I would like to invite the monitoring officer to set out the scope of the call-in and the protocol to be followed through this meeting. Tom.
Thank you, officers. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, members. So the scope for the call-in is as set out on pages 13 and 14 of your agendas. So in particular, that relates to the decision not being deemed to be proportionate, i.e. the action proposed was not proportionate to the desired outcome, and that the decision was not taken on the basis of due consultation, There is narrative that explains that. I won't read that out word by word, but that is contained within the box at the top of page 14 in your agenda packs. And then in terms of the protocol, again, that is contained, begins on page 21, across page 22 of your agenda pack. Again, I'm not going to go through that line by line. I think you're able to see that protocol. So I'll leave it there if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. Members, have you any questions for the monitoring officer? Are there any further questions at all about that? No.
On reflection, Chair, one thing that I did just want to set out, which was mentioned ahead of the meeting, that might be useful just to articulate for any of the public that are watching, on page 22 at 4.6 within the call-in protocol, that sets out 3 areas where the committee is asked to debate and then take the following courses of action, and that sets out 3 courses of action. Just to articulate that only 2 of those are available to the committee. So number 1, either you refer the matter back to Cabinet for reconsideration, together with the observations of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, or you determine that the decision be upheld and implemented immediately. Number 2 is not available to you. There's been no suggestion or case made that the decision is contrary to or not wholly in accordance with the policy framework or the budget.
Thank you. Committee, we must now agree the scope of the call-in and agree to the following protocol as attached in the paper BOS 2511. After the monitoring officer has spoken, could I have a proposer that we accept, please? Councillor Jameson and Councillor Carruthers as a seconder. Thank you. The lead officer will now conduct a vote and read back the results. Are we going to go electric or are we going to go hands again?
Show of hands.
Show of hands. If those in favour of that? Yep, that's unanimous. Okay, we've got the scope agreed. Now we'll move on to the paper itself, which is BOS 2512, the call-in of decision BCA 2540 car parking charges. I would like to invite Councillor Clover, the lead signatory for the call-in, to present the reasons for the calling. You have 10 minutes, which will be timed. That 10 minutes can be split amongst all the signatories, and I'm aware that you have Councillor Rees there as a signatory, who I believe is going to speak as well. So you'll be splitting the time, but up to a maximum between you of 10 minutes. So, Councillor Clover, over to yourself.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors and officers, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to explain our grounds for requesting the call-in. We believe that the principles of good decision-making have been breached here on 2 counts. 1, not proportionate to the desired income. The Director of Operations indicates that he does not expect car park usage to rise in the foreseeable future. However, car park expenditure will continue to rise. Originally, expenditure for 25-26 was forecast at 1.2 million, and this then rose to 1.35 million. For 26-27, the original forecast for expenditure was 1.32 million, and this has now risen to 1.45 million. This was from the Cabinet Papers, April 24, Appendix C, and Jan 26, Appendix D. The cumulative car parking income is now forecast to continue at around 1.1 million for the next few years. Therefore, the deficit, when viewed against the ambition of full cost recovery, can only grow larger and is unsustainable because as parking charges rise, visitor numbers will decrease as residents decide not to use high street retailers due to their expense or unaffordability. In short, we have a rising expenditure model creating a stagnant income stream. So what is the impact on local trade and visitors? In the first full 6 months, July 25, when car park charges were introduced, Hadley and Sudbury car parks saw a combined downturn of 200,000 less visits. This is from ONS Papers, 15th of September 25. This equated to a 30% downturn for Sudbury and a 50% downturn for Hadley, Modelling this out would equate to 400,000 less visits per annum. In the University of Suffolk survey, there is only a brief acknowledgement of this downturn, and it is dismissed with the statement that previously many people were obtaining consecutive free 3-hour tickets, thus overestimating the total number of cars previously parked. There is little evidence to support this claim. It is inconceivable that this behaviour was occurring on the industrial scale suggested here. The fact is that the introduction of car park charges, we have seen a dramatic downturn in visitor numbers to our town centre car parks, way beyond the original 10 to 20% forecast. Therefore, the subsidy to run our car parks is far greater than forecast. There also appears to be a lack of financial transparency. Car park income is paid into the general fund. However, it is unclear what the full breakdown of the administration costs inside the expenditure are. We know that officers' time is charged for, but we do not have a full understanding of whether there are any overheads that may or may not apply. We need to have a detailed breakdown of these costs before any decision on an increase is made. So with a budget surplus, can any increase be justified? The budget surplus rose to £249,000, then moved to £107,000, and is still subject to change. The reason for the reduction is due to lower forecast business rate income due to empty premises, a clear sign of business pressures and lower growth within our economy. We further understand that without the 20% increase in car park charges, the difference between the two models is £220,000. Can this increase be justified when measured against the impact on our local economies, particularly remembering that when the charges were introduced, an undertaking was given that there would be no further increase for 2 years? We simply cannot continue along this path of ever-rising administration costs and higher car park charges when the downturn in visitor numbers has been so significant. With a budget surplus, we do not need to increase charges at this time, nor can we justify doing so. Our duty is to promote economic prosperity. I will now ask Councillor Rees to explain the reasons why we consider the decision was to not taken on the basis of due consultation. Councillor Rees.
Foiled by technology. Right. Thank you, Chair, councillors, officers. There has been a failure to engage with local businesses. There was no attempt to engage directly with local high street retailers. Babergh licensing officers regularly hold open forums with the district's taxi drivers to discuss legislation and how it functions in practice. The meetings are well attended and learnings taken away for review and improvement. However, for car parking charges, we're informed that no retailers approached officers or cabinet to register their views. Why might this have been? Perhaps because a petition of 10,000 of their signatures against parking charges in the first place was disregarded. If cabinet and officers did engage with retailers and the public, they would understand the level of disillusionment in these businesses in the face of higher NI, business rates and wages. There has been no proper attempt to engage with the stakeholders of our local high street economies. We propose that an economic impact assessment be conducted as a matter of urgency to better understand the critical issues that they're facing. The University of Suffolk survey and its scope. The Cabinet commissioned an outside agency to conduct a general survey into car park charges and their impact, and threw away a golden opportunity to engage with retailers and businesses. The briefing document immediately confined its survey to a more generic nature of footfall, dwell time, benchmarking and level of transactions. No business turnover data was required. Car park usage data was not properly used in any meaningful way to explain the significant downturn into car visitor numbers. Therefore, the survey is of limited scope and usefulness. Now, the validity of the data. For footfall, the Council already had access to visitor insights data, which tracks mobile signals travelling below 4 miles per hour, including children, but provides no transaction information. It cannot be assumed a mobile phone signal correlates to transactions. Visitor insights themselves recommends combining their data with retail turnover, vacancy rates, and car park usage to gain the full picture. As per the University of Suffolk, dwell times are down 5%. The Council needs to recognise this trend. The University of Suffolk survey specifically noted that in the last 3 recorded months of July to September 2025, the footfall trend for Lavenham, Hadley and Sudbury is markedly down by an average of 11.5% per month during fine weather and tourist-filled months when an upturn would reasonably be expected. As to the benchmarking, this was not on a like-for-like basis. Towns like Bury St Edmunds, Colchester, Braintree and Ipswich have much larger populations and much broader offerings, so cannot represent a fair comparison. Their tipping point between being a sustainable economy or not runs at a much higher threshold than ours. Smaller towns, similar in size to Babergh, frequently grant the first 30 minutes free or just 50 pence for the first hour. We must remember that 90% of Babergh residents access a car as the only practical mode of transport available. It is their lifeline to the high street. For transactions, included in this data were supermarket transactions where parking is free. This raises the question as to the validity of this data in terms of car park charges impacting high street retailers where customers are paying to park. Notwithstanding this, we note that transactions are flatlining year on year at a time when food inflation alone was running at 4.5%. Our own findings. When we engaged with our local high street retailers and measured their turnover over the same 3-month period, pre and post introduction of parking charges, 70% reported a slump in turnover, the majority in the 5 to 30% range. We accept many factors can influence turnover, but the weight of numbers and many residents' statements of a deliberate reduction in their visits due to car parking charges needs to be addressed and properly understood. The University of Suffolk survey is at best generic, fails to account for the downturn in visitor numbers, and should in no way be treated as providing the meaningful insight that direct consultation would provide. The status of our local high street economies impacts every single resident within Babergh District, and not least Babergh District Council itself, whose duty it is to preserve, support and encourage growth. They are the centres of economic commerce and the lifeblood of what should be thriving communities attracting residents and visitors alike. In which case, do residents and businesses not deserve the respect to be listened to and have their say? The democratic answer would be to have an economic impact assessment as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. 9 minutes and 25 seconds. The monitoring officer would like to say a few words. I think we possibly strayed within that wording there, the presentation. So, Tom, did you want to just run through some points?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I think we've strayed within that presentation, strayed beyond the scope. I think it was quite difficult to intervene because it weaved in and out of scope slightly, but just to remind the committee that within scope what we're talking about is whether the decision taken was proportionate to achieve the desired outcome. So my interpretation of that, and this is within your papers, is that the desired outcome was to move the council closer to full cost recovery, and therefore was the increase in parking charges proportionate to achieve that outcome. The other element of the call-in was around consultation. So there was some narrative within that from Councillor Rees that was talking about the University of Suffolk report and what data it did or didn't include within it and what it referenced and didn't. Those elements I think you should disregard because, albeit they sit around the periphery of consultation, they don't go to the point of whether there was or was not due consultation, and that is the scope for your call-in, was whether there was due consultation or not. Some of the narrative that was provided was about whether retailers should have been spoken to and those kind of things, which does go to the point around consultation. But I just wanted to, I suppose, remind particularly the committee that some of what you heard there expanded beyond the scope of what you are here to scrutinise. So remind yourselves as you're going through that it's very much focused on, was it proportionate to achieve the desired outcome? Was there due consultation? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Saw, it is now your turn to... you've got 10 minutes to have your say as such, and we're ready to start counting whenever you start speaking.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to start my contribution by addressing the two issues that the monitoring officer has determined are valid for further scrutiny. And I think they bear repeating, that the decision to raise car parking charges is disproportionate because it will not achieve the objective of full cost recovery, as people will be disinclined to come to the towns and pay for parking. And secondly, because we have not consulted with retailers on the high streets to ascertain the impact of car parking charges on their businesses. Let me start by saying that parking charges are the ultimate grudge purchase. No one likes paying for parking. I don't. But no one likes driving around towns looking for somewhere to park their car, getting increasingly frustrated, shouting at the driver who's just nabbed the space you had spotted. As a council, we do not have to provide car parks. It is not a statutory duty. What we have chosen to do is to provide well-lit, accessible and secure car parks in the right locations to support our residents and visitors. They cost money to run. We provide the technology, keep them clean and tidy, repair and replace the hard surfaces, and pay for enforcement, not to mention paying the business rates on the space, and councillors know the council does not keep the major proportion of those rates. Over the last 15 years, the council, along with many others, has had to respond to a myriad of challenges, not least a reduction in the amount of funding provided by central government. Every year it becomes more and more difficult to respond to this new reality, but we have taken difficult decisions whilst preserving the services we give to our residents. When the new administration came into power in 2023, we were determined that we would not cut services, but to ensure that, we came to the realisation that we could not continue to subsidise our fees and charges. We took the prudent approach of moving to full cost recovery, actually charging what it cost us to provide the service. We said we would do it gradually, but we had to do it. Car parking was and is one of those services. Our car parks all meet British Parking Award standards, that's the highest standard, and are managed well by a small dedicated team shared with Mid-Suffolk. Previous administrations have been discussing charging for car parking since 2016. They engaged consultants to devise a 20-year car parking strategy, approved it, but time and time again ducked the decision. If councillors had taken the decision to charge at that time, the small increase that is being proposed would not even be in question, and we would be in a totally different position today. Let me share with the committee the council's current financial position. I was given these figures on Tuesday. Currently, for the financial year 26-27, we are forecasting a £107,000 surplus. This is without car parking income. We have made £2.5 million in savings to achieve this very small surplus. Every department in the council contributed. Looking ahead to 27-28 and 28-29, our position worsens to an £882,000 deficit, and then in 28-29, a £2 million deficit. On the one hand, it is good to have the clarity of the government's multi-year settlement, but this has not been equitable for rural councils like our own, with a lack of recognition of the cost of providing services and need. Our budget is still under tremendous pressure and vulnerable to unknown situations with limited reserves available to respond. Combine this with a lack of transparency around possible LGR costs, which was sprung on us in December 2024, and that your council will have to pay for, let me say that some estimate our share could be over £1 million. When you add in rising costs and provide for the unexpected, because there's always unexpected things happening in local government, I believe the car parking charge is proportionate, particularly when the alternative is cutting funding from the various community and voluntary groups that do an outstanding job in supporting our residents. I ask, would it be proportionate to cut the £100,000 funding Citizens Advice receives from us to help nearly 2,000 residents with a huge range of multiple issues, from debt to social care? Over 500 of these people live in Sudbury, nearly 300 in Great Cornard, and 141 in Lavenham. We will be doing our council taxpayers and our successor councils a disservice if we saddle them with debt and no reserves. And these charges are among the lowest in the county. They have been benchmarked against other Suffolk councils and neighbouring councils with towns of the same size. We also have a full programme of work for repairs and upgrades to the car parks in the coming years, from resurfacing and painting to putting in bays for motorbikes and motorhomes in others. Finally, on proportionality, Cabinet did listen. They chose to remove Sunday charging at this stage, as they felt avoiding this progression to bring Babergh more in line with the rest of Suffolk was still affordable. Now, let me move on to the question of consultation. There appears to be an idea that we don't talk to people. Officers speak to parish councils regularly about all sorts of public realm matters, including car parking. It is economic development's job to talk to businesses, and they pass on issues and comments to the appropriate officers and cabinet members. Councillors talk to residents, and they often ask me and other cabinet members to intervene on issues. I receive emails from residents. We all go to PC meetings. I go to meetings with Chambers of Commerce. I also attend the Working Together meeting with Sudbury Town councillors. I can say categorically that I have received one email about car parking from a resident. And since we appeared before ONS in September, we have had none. No businesses have contacted us. Doubts appear to be raised about the validity of the University of Suffolk study. When undertaking any research, you need a benchmark to compare against. We do not have one for Sudbury, Hadley and Lavenham retailers. We cannot compare their perceptions of trade before car parking charges with 1 year afterwards. And what of the other factors that influence their businesses? If we ask them, do you think car parking impacted your business? Of course they would say, yes, it has. But if we ask them to rank car parking charges against national insurance rises, the minimum wage, transport and fuel costs, tariffs, raw material costs, energy costs, rent increases, regulatory costs, changes to business rates, rent increases, and then the impact of extreme weather, rain or heat waves, both on the cost of producing fresh products and footfall, then I am sure we would get a different answer. Car parking would not be their primary concern. We make decisions based on objective evidence. We commissioned the University of Suffolk to undertake research to ascertain whether car parking charges impacted footfall and therefore retail spending and retail vacancy rates. We had benchmarks from the year before, and the reference area was the same. It included the central supermarkets in Sudbury for both years, ergo it is a robust benchmark. Why the University of Suffolk? They know the area. It is an independent, trusted institution with a record of undertaking evaluation research for Suffolk public sector organisations. The academics abide by a research code, which we had to sign up to as well. The team undertook statistical checks, tested the assumptions of the data they received and validated it. They also reviewed all the available studies on the impact of car parking on high streets from across the country. It is clear from their report that there is a degree of price inelasticity with parking charges, but increasing car parking does not significantly factor in impacting shopping behaviour. It is evident from this objective study that footfall, dwell time, spend and vacancy rates have not significantly changed pre and post car parking charges. Our vacancy rates on the high street are much lower than the national average of 13.6% and much lower than other towns in Suffolk. A large proportion of our residents are over 55. Indeed, 27% are over 65. And consumer behaviour statistics show that it is this cohort that shops mostly or always in person. Our high streets are vibrant and resilient.
Just a few seconds over. Well done. Thank you. Again, I think we strayed somewhat, so I think Tom again is going to come in and just remind members of what we're here to do and what we're here to discuss.
Without spending too long repeating what I said before, I think there was a degree to which we meandered beyond the scope there a little at times. I was trying to find the right word, and meandered might not have been the right word, but we drifted beyond scope slightly. I think the intention was to set context, but I think we drifted beyond in terms of the council's financial position. I think there is an accepted moving towards full cost recovery that is not part of your call-in and is solely an accepted position of the council. So the council's financial position is not a significant part of what you are looking at here. It is, was the action proportionate to achieve the desired outcome? The desired outcome was to move closer to full cost recovery. So is increasing parking charges proportionate to achieve that? That's ultimately what you're looking at. But I think there was some context that was provided for you there. But again, just to remind, we are confined to those two elements that are within your agenda papers.
Okay, members, that's the presentations finished. We're now, as members, open to ask questions to either the lead signatory or the cabinet member. These questions must relate to the scope of the call-in. So we can do our best to keep within that. Members, it's up to you now. The floor's open. Who'd like to go first? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chairman. First question to the lead signatory, Paul Clover. Councillor Paul Clover, sorry. Councillor Clover, the first part of the not taken on the basis of due consultation, you specifically say the Cabinet's refusal to engage and enter into a dialogue. I mean, how can you substantiate that?
Thank you.
The refusal is a strong word.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. Yeah, the point is that obviously I was involved with the petition, and there was very much, and we have to remember, of course, that Cornard had to work very hard, Great Cornard had to work very hard to get the council to attend their meeting. So this, and when I went and spoke to businesses in Sudbury and Lavenham, that was their feeling as well, that they were not being listened to, and that they because of the petition seemed to have no effect. That's why they feel that they just aren't being listened to. But I can say that from what we could see a downturn in turnover, and this is where I think that although it might not be proportionate to the desired outcome, that this is the problem here, that we've got there's no doubt there's been an economic impact on and the car parks are much less full than they used to be. So that's the reason for the statement.
I think, have you got the answer you wanted, Councillor Wyman, or do you want to come back with the second one? I think we're starting to, yep, go again, yep.
With the greatest respect, all councils have the opportunity to go to cabinet meetings. I attend cabinet meetings as a lead member. We all have the chance to pose these questions to cabinet and challenge Councillor Saw or anybody else on what we think, whether there's an economic downturn or whatever. So I find it really difficult to understand why we've sort of reached this situation today where we're having to challenge the cabinet over decisions that we've all had the chance to have some input with. And I'm going to come on to Councillor Saw in a moment, if I may, but it just seems really counterintuitive that we've reached this point. And clearly, it's a very emotive issue. Councillor Saw.
Sorry, have you got a question in there?
Yes, I have. So, can you just confirm to me why you or any of the councillors haven't gone down that route and actually attended cabinet meetings and challenged the cabinet amendments?
Well, my understanding is on cabinet meetings that we are confined to the agenda, are we not? So I wouldn't attend a cabinet meeting if it wasn't on the agenda. That would be my thinking on that. And I think that, as I say, that previous attempts at engagement have been repelled really.
Okay, that's an answer, but I've got Councillor Jameson who has got his hand up, if you'd like to go.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You say in your own engagement has shown that report that 2/3 of Suffolk reduced turnover. Now, I'm assuming that engagement was yourselves asking questions rather than an independent survey?
That's absolutely correct. What we did was we just asked them for their 3 monthly turnover figures from Feb to Feb, March, April for 24 and 25. And they were those that were prepared to reveal their turnover figures we used. So it wasn't independent. No, of course not. No.
So considering you're consistently being opposed to car parking charges, would it be fair to say that some of the comments may have been not necessarily, the questions may have been not necessarily, you may have directed your question specifically to get the answer you need?
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Yeah, I've offered to share the results with the cabinet, and if all of the results, including the ones that were said, they had an uptake in business. So I've just let it lie the way it came in, and also all the comments that were made, so that and anyone is entitled to see that document should they wish to do so.
Okay. And one other question at this point. On the first part of your call-in, you say that the raise of the car parking charges will reduce visitor numbers. Now, surely that is just your assumption. There's no hard evidence that that will happen.
Yeah, the first 6 month figures were taken from the cabinet papers, and then, of course, then we really, to make it 12 months, we doubled those figures. But you can say it's an assumption. I wouldn't say it's wildly out. And in fact, with the University of Suffolk survey figures, they closely correlated.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Grandon, you have a question for Councillor Clover?
Thank you. You talk quite a lot about surveys and so on, that you'd like a better consultation. Have you got an example of one that you would like to see, or what someone else, another place has done, or something like that?
Thank you, Councillor Grandon. Yeah, if you just give me a minute, I might have something on that. Where is it?
Just remind members, we can ask Councillor Saw some questions as well.
Sorry. I can't find it to hand, but there was a survey by opinion which said that if people would car parking charges affect their decision to visit a town centre, 62% said yes, and then I think the retail consortium came up with a very similar figure. This was on a general scale, so we're not talking about a specific area, but those are the sort of surveys that we saw.
UK-wide, you mean?
UK-wide, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clover, you mentioned some really quite big figures for car park usage, and saying that the uses of the car park have gone down. Can you remind me what those figures were, please, for Hadley and Sudbury and Lavenham? Yeah. They were really huge.
So this is from the Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 15th September 2025. So what we've got is we've got Sudbury short stay for February through to July, and for 24 it's 315,000 visits, and then for 25 the same period was 188,000 visits. So that is 126,000 less stays. That's on short stay. Okay. On long stay, it was much closer. It was for 24, it was 120. Well, nearest damn it, 125,000, and then for 25 it was 117,000. So that was just about 7,700. So if we put those two together, it was 134,000 less stays, which was about a 30% reduction. Okay, and then on Hadley, it was for short stay. This was quite big. It was 130,000 in 24, and then in 25 it was 57,500. Okay, the long stay, actually, you can see it went up there, but from a very low base. So in 24 it's 3,300, and then in 25 it went up to 9,715 there. So, and you put all that together, and that gave you your 50% on Hadley.
Thank you. I think in Sudbury, wasn't some of the... hold on, I'll ask Deb for this one. Wasn't some of the car parks changed from short stay to long stay? Was there changes in that which might account for... I can't remember.
No, I'm sorry. I'll try and answer this, but I may have to confer with the Director of Ops. So after I've sort of got my head around this blizzard of figures, I think we're comparing apples and bananas here. The 24, the figures before car parking charges were levied. Remember that people were not paying, they were taking tickets, they were parking for up to 3 hours, they were moving if they wanted to park any longer. So I don't think that they are the same benchmark. As far as, and we still do have some free car parking in the towns. But if I may, Chair, could I just confer with the officer, or can the officer actually add some
You can confer, and if the officer wishes to answer the question on your behalf, he can do so.
Thank you. Would you care to answer the question?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two parts to the question, really. In terms of the designation changes, in Sudbury, the Roy's car park changed from short stay to long stay designation. In Hadley, the Magdalen Road car park changed from being short and long stay designation to just long stay designation. And just the point of clarity around where stays are being referenced and visits are being referenced, the 6-monthly update report Overview and Scrutiny, actually the figures that are being referred to are the number of tickets that were issued, and our explanation of that has been you can't compare the number of tickets issued before and after, because the tariff bands that we're now issuing against have changed. There were more free tickets being issued previously, and more users moving between car parks to obtain free tickets, or when they came in an extra visit during the day, getting a free ticket there as well. And there have been changes there, so we can't compare one with the other as reliable evidence before and after. So we've used the reliable evidence as being the data that we have from visit numbers, dwell time, spend data which we've purchased, and number of vacancies on the high street. So we've managed in retail premises. So we've used that as a before and after comparison of data, because we couldn't compare the tickets issued before and after, because the tariff bands that we're issuing them under changed when we varied the charges upwards.
Thank you. Just one thing I will say, at the ONS meeting in September, you could provide no data, read the car park hopping, and when it was questioned at the ONS, it was said that you'd received a few complaints also, but again we had no hard evidence as to what that what those numbers were, or in fact the data relating to car park hopping. I don't know if there's any real proof that you can evidence that on. But members, any other questions to Councillor Clover or Councillor Wyman?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Saw. I mean, clearly a lot of the issues of the whole process sit around information and use of information and interpretation of information. And a key part of the guiding principle of the decision that Cabinet made sits around the University of Suffolk report. Is that a fair assertion?
I think that the report, we made a conscious decision to get an independent benchmark, and from a source, a local but trusted source. I think it was a supplemental to our own figures, but yes, we did think it was a important thing to do.
But it was clearly a guiding principle. Okay. My second question, Chair, is who set the scope for the report? Because you can only get answers to questions that you ask.
Initially, myself and the officers wrote the brief, but when we went to see David James, the lead academic, he interrogated the brief and basically took out some things, put in other things, because their brief has to be almost peer-reviewed by other academics. And as I said, they have a research code which they use to ensure the validity and veracity of their research.
So you're entirely satisfied then with the scope of the report, the information that came from it, and you feel that completely satisfies the information that Cabinet would have needed to make that decision?
Absolutely.
Members? Councillor Grandin?
Thank you. In that case, can you tell me why you decided not to include businesses in the report?
Are you asking me why we did not go out and survey businesses face to face? Because as I mentioned in my contribution, one of the issues we have is that the timings that we have to focus on. We also believed that it would be very time-consuming to go out to retailers. We would have to find a weighted sample. We did discuss this with the University of Suffolk, who also suggested that we would need to balance a retailer's study with a resident's study as well, to be statistically relevant. As I hope I outlined in my response, you have to, if we're asking about retail behaviour, we have to ask a whole myriad set of questions. We cannot just ask them about car parking. Car parking, I do accept that car parking probably may well have an effect, but how do you get a weighted sample? The issue is, as I outlined, there are many, many different factors that impact retailers' success or failure. Car parking is just one of them. Some of the studies that have been done, which were assessed by the University of Suffolk, actually said that convenience of car parking was a greater issue than whether you paid for it or not. So that is why we decided that we would not do a survey. And there is no reason why we should do a survey. We've never been asked to do one. And to be honest, it would be very time-consuming. It would cost a lot of money, much more than the money that we invested in the University of Suffolk report. And businesses know that they can come to us at any time. That's why we have an economic development department. They interact with businesses all the time. And they come back to us with all sorts of issues, but car parking has never been one of them.
Members, any other questions? Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. Can we just have a quick look at, it talks to the first point, which is not proportionate to the desired outcome, which is page 70 in the report, Appendix D, line 1, employees, direct officer employee costs and travel. The budget for 25-26 was 74,810. The full forecast for 25-26 was 201,749. So that's a variance of plus 170%. Also on the same table, support services, corporate overhead, public realm costs, budget for 25-26 was 347,360, and the full cost forecast was 530,192, which again is a variance of plus 53%. Could we have an explanation as to why there are such massive variances in cost between the actual, well, the budget and the forecast, really? Because it's obviously adds a significant amount to the overall overhead, which has been alluded to by Councillor Clover, and it would obviously add some context to our understanding of how it works. Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. Might I actually... apparently, Mr. Burton can answer this question much better than I can. I will come back with a supplemental to what he says.
You'd like to defer that to the officer, yeah?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, that's fine.
Officer.
And I'm happy to answer that. So I think throughout this whole process and in Cabinet, that column is what we've always referred to as the published budget book of car parking. And what we're setting out to do is identify what is the full cost of delivering the service of car parking. And for that reason, there are other services that input into car parking that are not included in the budget book figure. There are other teams. So what bridges the gap of that 74,000 and the 201,000 is climate change team. They, deal with electric vehicles and sustainable travel. We have public realm management and administration. We have our assets team. We have building services and their expertise that all go into, for example, resurfacing. Their expertise is all pulled upon, and their proportion of employee costs are included there. And then on the support services side, that has our corporate overhead, which is your central HR, your finance, your insurances, depot costs, but the difference is public realm in itself. Our public realm team grit the ground, they cut the grass, they empty the bins, and all of that. So that would be my answer. Director may want to elaborate, equally, Councillor Saw.
don't really wish to elaborate too much other than there's a range of costs that are included, as we've explained previously at committee, at Cabinet for, and we were questioned extensively on all of these costs at that particular meeting. We have to include the full cost recovery, which isn't always the same as the published budget book effectively as well. We're happy with what has been included as a full cost recovery figures from across the different services of the council to make up that. The council doesn't operate a salami slicing and cross-charging of all of its charges. As you know, it publishes budget books, but not everything is charged around corporate recharges. We work in a certain way. We're happy that reflects the fair cost of car parking, and indeed with the model projecting forward as well in terms of what we think will happen with income and costs there as well. I think also the questions around proportionate and the level of difference that we've got to in the model, and that level of difference there is still quite a significant way away from full cost recovery versus the actual costs. It's not getting close to being the zero figure.
Could I just add, Councillor Wyman? I think many people see a car park as an empty space in the town centre. I think what the finance partner has laid out quite clearly is that the number of people and the number of departments that are involved in the car parks. I have to say myself that before I became an expert maniché on car parks, I didn't realise how many council departments were involved in their upkeep. And so therefore that all has to be, as you know, put into the budget book.
Okay, members, one of our members has required a comfort break, so can we just take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back after that if we can, please. Thank you. welcome back, everyone. Councillor Wyman, you had an answer to one of your questions. Would you like a follow-up on that, please?
Just a quick follow-up on the sort of numbers question, really. And with respect to officers and yourself, Councillor Saul, I mean, that was a less than convincing response, so I'm completely honest. I mean, that didn't really answer the 170% variance, nor the plus 53% variance. For anyone's listing online, residents, I think they'd find that pretty confusing. So I think the really key thing for us, and I think for anybody who's watching online, and it also relates to Councillor Clover's overall question, which is cost transparency. And, you know, if you were cynical, you could say, well, maybe we've moved our costs along a little to help us look as though we can move 100% cost recovery a bit further up the agenda. And we don't actually need to do that. So I think the point about cost transparency is really important. So, you know, my question is, that's not really answered my question. And I still feel that there's a shortfall in response. And I think perhaps the chairman might like to follow up on that point.
Yeah, I also feel that the numbers are being mentioned, but how do you quantify that and how do you justify that as well? How do you break it down? How do you quantify those additional costs that seem to be being added on? So that would be my question as well.
I'd answer that with, there's two models I think that are being referred to. The model that was presented originally when the charges were first varied, and the model that's been presented now. There's a significant gap in time between those two models and more known information in terms of what the actual income is, for instance, and what the actual costs are there. And like any model, a bunch of assumptions that's also put into the model which we've actually listed. The cost base and things have changed over time over that period, and it's a fair reflection of our view on what the costs are that should be included and what we think should be projected forward with the income going forward. And we've done that in line with the principles that the council and any officers would use in putting any modelling and any budgets together, you know, that the council would use under its financial procedures. It would not try to overestimate and be over-optimistic in income and you know, underestimate what the costs were. But we have not inflated costs or deflated income to achieve an aim, and the final position of that updated model is still some way away from full cost recovery, certainly a step away from, if any sensitivity analysis was being applied to it, of even equaling zero. And even if that was the case, then you could still over cost recover on this service. No one said that you can't do that. There isn't rules sort of against it from that point of view. And cost income levels need to be set so that you're not in a position where you're wanting to change the car park charges all the time to try and recover that full cost gap. So I'm happy with the way that we've approached that process. We've fully disclosed figures in the past on that process at multiple meetings, and we've built on that same principle for putting this model together here, and we'll be happy to be further examined on it, but I'm focusing on the actual proportionate bit rather than having come here prepared with a disclosure on the cost model.
Thank you. Councillor Wyman, again.
Last point. So, from your perspective then, you feel it's entirely proportional?
Absolutely.
Thanks. That's it.
And try and remember to ask questions specifically to the Cabinet member first. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Saw whether she thinks that increasing the parking charges this year, when previously we said that we wouldn't do it for a couple of years, shows the integrity and honesty of the council. To me, it doesn't demonstrate.
I don't think that really falls within the scope, to be honest, Councillor Grandin. If you can rephrase it in a slightly different way or whatever, reword it, but that doesn't really fall within the scope of what we're here to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Do you think the increase in parking charges by 20% should have been done this year? Should it not have waited till next year? Could we not have waited till next year?
It's the same question. I'm not really sure that necessarily falls within the scope. If the Cabinet member wishes to provide an answer, you can, but you don't have to. Are there any other questions? Members? I'd just like to say, I've got a couple, I've made quite a few, but Monitor Officer will probably tell me off in a minute. I know a lot's been said about data, and we've got quite a bit of data in the University of Suffolk report, but I think Councillor Clover touched on one bit that wasn't really addressed within the report. It was phrased and mentioned, I think, in the first or second paragraph, and that was the visitor numbers. To me, that would be a concern, in that if those numbers are quantified and are proven to be correct, then the economic impact that that is having could be quite significant. So that's a concern for me about data, especially when Councillor Saw, you said you're driven by data. Personally, I feel some of that data was lacking. Do you agree?
I think we actually added to the data because we had the visitors' numbers, we had dwell time, we had vacancy rates, but we also added all the spend data to it to ensure that we knew not only how many people were coming to the high streets, but what they were doing when they were there. It is true that not everything everyone does on the high street is go shopping. You know, we do have multi-purpose high streets, and in actual fact, you know, when we were, and we wanted to have a benchmark. This was the best way that we could have a benchmark from pre-car parking to post. I do think that those figures are robust. In fact, the University of Suffolk asked us to get the spend figures, which we did, because they felt it would add another level of robustness to the data.
In your searching for full cost recovery, was there ever a discussion about presenting exactly that? Projected charging for full cost recovery. Was that ever considered or debated within the Cabinet? And what would those figures have looked like as an alternative to 20 pence? What figures would we have looked at for full cost recovery?
We have looked at full cost recovery, and I think we have given those figures, have we not?
I think that if we were going to model full cost recovery, then by definition would be in a situation where we were looking at not having, you know, not using 10 pence or 20 pence as the amount that you'd add on a ticket. You might have 5 pence, 7.5 pence, whatever it actually was there as well. So, but we didn't set out with express aim to achieve full cost recovery. The same with fees and charges across the council. We have a stated policy across the council of working towards that, but we try and consider the impact of how we actually get there and what is reasonable. We put a lot of focus on the benchmarking against what other councils were doing to make sure that that was reasonable there as well. As you know, we brought forward an option around Sunday charging, which was included as part of that, which Cabinet considered and chose not to put forward as well. That, you know, listening for that, to take that out there as well, and they felt they didn't necessarily have to do that. But yeah, I think when you put car park charges up at any stage, it's a difficult process to go through, and it has some costs associated to the changeover, relatively minor in comparison, but having to put new signboards up, etc., change
sorry,
the
Mark,
machine.
but did you actually formulate a full cost recovery presentation so that Cabinet could consider the full cost recovery?
We formulated another option which got us closer to full cost recovery, yes, but at this particular stage as well, like we've taken out the Sunday charging. I mean, yes, the Sunday charging and a higher charge option, yes, that was formulated and looked at.
But that wasn't in the Cabinet report?
No, we went with a lower level of increase in the Cabinet report, yes.
Councillor Saw, you wish to?
If I could hopefully add to this, we did look, as you know, with quite a lot of our fees and charges, we have taken a gradualist approach. There was a higher figure discussed, but this was pre the government settlement. And so therefore, at one stage, the officers were putting nothing into the budget for any contribution from central government. There was a higher option, which would have been to full cost recovery, but the settlement that we got from government was better than zero. Not much better, but it was better than zero.
So if you had those figures, wouldn't it have been, from a transparency point of view, good for them to be presented to Cabinet, to be public knowledge, so that the public themselves had an idea of what full cost recovery could look like?
I mean, we could provide those figures, but I think our philosophy has always been that full cost recovery is our ultimate destination. We recognise that to get to that, we might have to do it in phases. It's the same for, I would say, all of our services and fees, whether it be litter bins or whatever.
Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. Councillor Hull and Councillor Clover have both mentioned about visitor numbers being down. Now, am I correct, or maybe misunderstood the report, that visitor numbers haven't changed, but car parking has gone down, which is correct?
Yeah, it's the number of tickets that have issued that have gone down.
So the data you have, is that showing visitor numbers are steady, or visitor numbers?
Car parking numbers or
No,
visitor
numbers?
numbers? Visitor numbers are steady, yes.
Right. So when people talk about visitor numbers going down, we're talking about the number of car parking tickets that are going down, not the visitor numbers which are showing steady. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's correct.
The tickets purchased in our car parks prior to the original change and after the original change have gone down, the number of tickets that have come out of machines. However, there are a higher proportion of tickets previously. When you press the button, you got a free ticket for it. Now you don't, with the variation in charges. The number of tickets, the visitor numbers, which are referred to as visitor numbers, haven't significantly changed anywhere, but the ticket numbers have changed. We also accept that there will be a modal shift and a behaviour shift of where some people are deciding to park, because in all locations there is an amount of free parking. If you're prepared to walk a bit further, go to somewhere that's a bit less convenient.
I think, Mark, you've answered the basic question. I would like to add that what I do find, and members might also find confusing, in our ONS report, in the University of Suffolk report, we have total stays, we have visits, we have use. There seems to be a crossover of phrasing for probably the same thing. And if it's not the same, I think we need to have clarity in the reports as to, and perhaps we can start using one word and make sure we keep to that phrasing, whether it be stays, whether it be visits, because in various reports you can draw different conclusions from them, when actually what you believe is one set of information, but just using different headings. So I think it is important going forward we try and stick to that. Tom.
If I could just remind councillors once more that the scope of your call-in is limited to, was it proportionate to the action desired? Was there due consultation? We've had some comment and narrative around what are good quality reports, what is transparency and openness and other matters like that, and that they are all interesting and useful for the overall quality of debate and quality of decision taking. But just to remind you, your focus is very solidly on, was the decision proportionate to achieve the outcome, and was there due consultation? Thank you.
Members, any other questions? I have an additional one, if I can. I'll address it to Councillor Saw. That was actually the officer that used the word impact. Did we in any way in the consultation question the impact of this increase? I mean, changes can unintentionally exclude groups, reducing inclusivity, etc. So I just think the impact, as the officer mentioned it, did we address that in the Cabinet meeting?
Are you saying the impact on the high street or the impact on the retailers?
Both.
Both, okay. I think if we're looking at the University of Suffolk report, that was focused on the data that we were able to give them. I think one of the key metrics on impact is actually the vacancy rate, because we recognise, and it's well recognised, that retail shops are shutting, but on our high streets, our vacancy rate is steady and is also way below the national average. And as I said,
did we carry out an impact assessment?
Did we carry out an impact?
Yes.
Well, we know how many shops have closed on the high street, and that is the impact.
So we didn't do an economic impact assessment?
Well, yes, because the vacancy rates are a measure of impact.
With all due respect, that is not an economic impact assessment. That's a judgment on the data that we've got available.
Yes, but we decided to do the research on the data that we had available and the data that we could get, which was both robust and available to us at the time.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? No? Okay. No problem. Right. We've finished our questions. I think now we'll go to summing up. So I think Councillor Saw has the first opportunity at this one. Oh, sorry, Councillor Grandin.
Are we having debate? Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Councillor Saw sums up, and then Councillor Clover gets an opportunity, and then they will leave, and then we go into debate. All right?
Thank you, Chair. I would suggest that there are very few issues that the Council has to deal with that are quite so open to scrutiny, are so often discussed, and referring back to what Councillor Wyman said, if as many councillors did come to our last council meeting, and some of them are here today, and some of them, you will have been, I think, heartened by the amount of questions from cabinet members and the amount of questions from councillors who came to the cabinet. There were a great deal of searching questions. It was probably one of the most effective cabinet meetings that we've had, and we did take note of what was said to us. We took note of the popular feeling. When we changed, we did listen, and we did take out Sunday charging. Why did we do that? Because we had views from both district councillors and town councillors about the effect that Sundays were becoming more active in the towns, both from a leisure aspect and from a retail aspect. So therefore, we took Sunday charging out. So I think we have been listening to what people say, but we are here to lead. We are here to do the most prudent and most responsible thing for the council and for our residents. And I believe that is what we've done as regards car parking. I believe it is proportionate. I believe we have consulted. I believe that we have taken a very considered view about the research, and we wanted to be in a position where no one could turn around to us and say we marked our own homework, and we have not done so. We went through a very rigorous process with the University of Suffolk. It was by no means, they are even more conscious of their reputation than we are conscious of ours. I believe that this is the right decision. It is a proportionate decision, and it's the right decision for residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saul. Councillor Clover, you also have 5 minutes to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, just to start with then, can I just say that when the car park charges came in, the car park occupancy rates were massively reduced, and that is reflected in the University of Suffolk survey in the sense that Sudbury was, in terms of usage rates, 30% down for Sudbury, 40% down for Hadley. Now, is this proportionate to the desired income? Well, I think in the last call-in on car park charges, April 24, Councillor Ward, when referring to budgetary pressures, said the new car park income will provide additional income. The fact is, it has not. It's costing 1.45 million to administer and rising to net 1.1 million. No commercial business would be run on this basis, nor could they afford to do so, particularly in the knowledge that the business rate income forecast has just been reduced due to more empty premises. The deficit, therefore, to full cost recovery is not that different to the subsidy required for not introducing car park charges in the first place, and there has been no acknowledgement of the impact and cost to our local economies. The way in which the car park expenditure model is structured is not sustainable and therefore not fit for purpose. In its current form, it is neither of benefit to the council or its retail businesses or Babergh residents. As expenditure costs continue to rise, the deficit to full cost recovery will grow ever more. If car park charges are increased to mitigate against the deficit, this will be self-defeating as residents and visitors will be driven to stores where parking is free or go online. Town centres thrive due to having free accessibility. If we continue to ramp up the entrance fee, they will gradually fade away and disappear. When considering what our high streets contribute to our local economies, we simply cannot allow this to happen, particularly when it is our duty to support and encourage local economic prosperity. With the budget surplus yet to be finalised, this decision has to be premature. It simply does not need to be taken at this point in time, nor is there any justification for so doing. Therefore, the decision to increase car park charges now is a bad decision. Let's just have a look at the trends here that indicate the economic viability of our high streets. Customer car park visitor numbers down significantly. Store occupancy rates down. Dwell times down. Footfall down. Transaction levels when including inflation down. High street retailers turnover down. On-street parking notices down by 33%.
Councillor Clover, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going off script. Have you nearly finished there? Because
yeah,
we are
close. Yeah. Okay. Therefore, we would ask the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to refer this decision back to Cabinet on the following basis: that no further increases in car park charges are agreed for 6 months until a full breakdown of the rising costs of administering the car park charges have been re-examined with a view to qualifying whether the corporate overheads are reasonable and justifiable, and then 2, an economic impact assessment has been conducted to engage with Babergh's traders and residents to assess the impact of car parking charges on their livelihoods and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. again, I think we may have strayed a wee bit there, but if I can ask that Councillor Clover, Councillor Rees and Councillor Saw leave committee, and then the committee will then go in. Oh, and Margaret as well, and all the cabinet members as well, sorry. And then we'll go into debate. Right, members, it seems a bit bizarre we've had to ask everyone to leave when they can go outside and watch it on camera, but that is in the Constitution, so we've followed that to the word, but it might be something we address in future, should we have another one of these, but we've followed the Constitution as per word. It's now open to debate, members, so it's up to you guys to fire. Oh, yeah, Tom would just like to go through some clarifications again. We drifted off tangent again there, so I think Tom would like to just remind members of what we're here to do.
In danger of sounding like a stuck record, members, just to bring you back, the summing up expanded and I think essentially addressed why the decision made by Cabinet shouldn't have been made. That is not what you are considering here as part of the call-in process. You are not considering whether Cabinet should or should not have made that decision in the round. What you are considering is, are there any recommendations that you should be making, that you feel should be made to Cabinet for them to reconsider on the basis of there being not sufficiently due consultation, or that the decision taken, i.e. to increase parking charges, was disproportionate to the outcome the report was seeking to achieve, i.e. taking the council closer to full cost recovery. They are the two strands of your consideration and your debate.
Members. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to state that had full consultation and suitable consultation for the kind of matter we're discussing taken place, such data that I have in front of me here from one of the retailers who keeps footfall data. It's a shop called Kitty and M, who provided me 2024 versus 2025 footfall data. And I have the months from July to November of those years. And on each of those occasions, I have the figures here, but I won't go through each figure. But in each of those months, it's over 100 less since parking fees have come in. And they put that down directly to parking fees. And another piece of data that had consultation of businesses taken place would be that, again, directly related to parking fees, The manager of Boots in Hadley has informed me that they've lost 15 hours of
Sorry, so your point is should businesses have been included in the consultation?
Businesses should have been included,
okay.
Because then this kind of information would have been found out. And without our vibrant high streets, that is what the council does, you know, keeps our areas vibrant, and you know, that's part of our remit,
Okay.
to keep vibrant, healthy
That isn't
towns.
really part of our scope,
Part
but
of.
I think everyone here takes your point, but we must try and stick
Okay.
on scope
Yes,
if
so,
we can.
so such data though, as just to illustrate, and I've got lots more because I've
I
interviewed most of the high street
I think
in
we've got your
Hadley.
point, but again, we have to keep on scope.
Yeah, but that's consultation that was
Yes.
not done by the University of Suffolk, which could easily have been done. And that was just two examples of findings that would have given a different outlook. And the other point was dwell time. Every retailer I spoke to and other businesses all said that dwell time was a much bigger issue than comes out in the
Okay.
report.
Okay. Any other members want to contribute? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and confine my comments, observations to more of a strategic and less tactical sort of basis, really. I mean, clearly, the whole car parking business is very emotional. Councillor Saw referred to it as a grudge payment, which it is. No one really wants to pay for car parking, so I think that's why we always get hung up with all the emotional sort of attachments that we take with it. But for me, there's a few key points, and the key points with this, Councillor Clover and any councillor in the authority has every right to come along to a cabinet meeting and make input at some point during the business of the cabinet. So that's always an option, and I don't think that's ever been exercised to any extent by any member that's actually now complaining about car parking charges. Point one. Point two, and Councillor Saul made the point, at the end of the day, the cabinet are satisfied, entirely satisfied, with the information they've sought through the University of Suffolk report. We can always argue that report wasn't perhaps as full as it should have been. I'm not entirely satisfied, I don't think, with sometimes the transparency of our own charges, which also talk to the point of full cost recovery, but that's another matter. But I think, they've satisfied as full as they possibly can all the objectives that have been set. So, from my perspective, and if I was looking at both the points, in terms of proportionality and due consultation, they've been fulfilled.
Members? Councillor Jameson?
Yes, looking at the 2 points Councillor Clover has raised, on point one, I do feel he's making probably whether it's a wise assumption or just an assumption that visitor numbers will go down if we try to increase costs further to meet full cost recovery. And it also seems to me he's assuming that the reduction in car parking from when it was free has made it almost impossible to get full cost recovery. So I don't know if either of those points are correct. I mean, it may prove that they are, but at the moment I don't think that is more of an assumption than a fact. With regards to the consultation, which point two, I think there might be room for further consultation with the chambers of commerce for the towns or the businesses. But my understanding was that we've previously agreed that should, if that does come, that should come after a full year's charging cycle occurs, so we get a full understanding of what the effects are on the towns, which hasn't happened yet. And we have the council, the officers and the cabinet have used an independent, and it seems a valid way of getting data for this decision, which I think is a fair and accurate assessment at the moment. In the course of this year, whether we take that further and consult with businesses is something we should look at perhaps after we get a full set of figures for a whole year. And but yeah, I tend to agree that the Cabinet Council have done all they can at the moment in making this decision.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. Yes, we all want to see thriving high streets, and we recognise the pressures that businesses are under, whether it be from car parking charges or weather and national insurance and all the rest of it. But we are only 1 year into the parking charges being introduced, and I feel that the full impact may not yet be felt. You know, although there are a lot of businesses, they're still there, I know that some of them are hanging on in there by their fingernails. It would be brilliant if we could have a more detailed study on our high streets, but I'm not sure whether that should be down to Babergh District Council to organise that and pay for that, because it must cost a lot of money to do that. And it could be a really wide-ranging study, looking at the changes in transport as well. I'm aware that the people like me who always walk into town, we're not really being measured. I suppose I might be once, you know, mobile phone, etc., etc. But it's a very broad way. The Suffolk University of Suffolk paper is very broad, isn't it, really? They didn't get right down to the nitty-gritty, but I don't suppose they could. So it would be good to have an idea as to whether or not the introduction of parking charges and the increases has led to any change in people's behaviour as to whether or not they're using their cars less. I'm probably going off it here and not really sticking to this. Okay, so I think the first part of Councillor Clover's call-in about the desired outcome, if the desired outcome is to move closer to full cost recovery, then increasing the charges, the parking charges by just 20% will do that. So I think that that's fine. And well, it'd be better if it wasn't, but that's just the way it is. And also he says it would reduce visitor numbers for those who can't afford the increased costs. Again, it doesn't take into account people walking or cycling. And again, it's an assumption, and we just have to hope that that isn't the case. As to the consultation, you know, I think yeah, it would be better to have more consultation and actually speak to businesses, but I appreciate that is a big ask maybe, but it would be good to do that in the future. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've sat and listened to the questions of my colleagues here, and they've been excellent questions that were committed to just Paul Clover's calling. What I would say is that the consultation need to engage with retailers, but also visitors and residents, as they are the ones using our towns. We need to remember that people now shop online, cost of living and home deliveries all come into this. So, you know, my position is the graphs provided are not encouraging, and I feel that the time for the increase is not now. However, all of these things, I mean, from a Sudbury perspective, we have had our market manager actually carry out these these addresses with the retailers, and of course they will say that the footfall is low, but you've got a lot more circumstances, and Councillor Carruthers there made an excellent comment about transport. That has lost a lot of our elderly population who cannot get in. We have got no buses running down Wallingfield Road. Therefore, you know, we have got, that's another instance of footfall. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. I think without a proper consultation, the University of Suffolk report proves inaccurate, because a lot of the footfall that would have been measured would have been from the displacement of cars from the car park to parking in side roads and other areas other than car parks. So there's a lack of accuracy in the figures that we've been given due to displacement. And a further lack of accuracy is...
I don't think we can really question the accuracy of the report. I think the report is what it is. I mean, you might want to question the brief of the report, but the report itself is... I personally don't have any problems with its accuracy, because the data that it's used is something we provided, and I'm sure that there is no question about that. I think what you're saying is it may have included additional things that weren't scoped in it. That's something different to being accurate, I think.
That as well, but it would have included people walking around the town who were not using the car parks, who were displaced parkers in the street that we get complaints of all the time, who are parking, you know, in other roads, not the car park.
So what is your point re the consultation?
So I think we need a consultation of businesses to measure the effect before and after parking fees, to get a true, accurate picture there, and to gain user or visitor activity, you know, how they use the car parks before and now.
Right. I think we're getting a little bit cross. I know Councillor Jameson mentioned it as well. Previously at ONS, and this is not to do with this meeting, but previously at ONS, when we had the 6-month review, we did ask if businesses could be consulted when the 12-month review comes forward. That's for another day. So we have requested that, and we will see when that 12-month report comes in, probably April, May, sometime this year, whether that's happened, because that is something we asked to be done. We are here and now. We have what we have in front of us. A couple of you have mentioned about the consultation. You could argue, should there be an economic impact assessment, because this directly affects the economy of our high streets. Ultimately, we as an authority are responsible for those. It is part of our brief to ensure that we work with them and make them vibrant, healthy, and that they succeed. But we are here for what we are here for. So have any of you got any recommendations, or are there any proposers that you are happy with the Cabinet's decision and this call-in is not going to be carried forward any further? Councillor Wyman.
Chair, I'd like to propose we accept 4.63 and the decision be upheld and implemented immediately.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Jameson. I will just get Alicia to read out what Councillor Wyman has proposed and what Councillor Jameson has seconded. Members, if you can just listen to Alicia, she'll read out what Councillor Wyman has proposed.
Thank you, Chair. So what Councillor Wyman has proposed, and that has been seconded by Councillor Jameson, is that the decision of the Cabinet be upheld and implemented immediately. That is the option as detailed on page 22 in your pack under 4.6, and it is option 3. Thank you, Chair.
Now we can continue the debate, if you wish. We do have a motion put forward. It's proposed, it's seconded. If members wish to add anything else, they can. If not, we will go to the vote on that proposal. No other? No. We will go to a vote on that proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress on ModGov. Please bear in mind you might have to scroll a little way on your computer to see the vote. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So that makes 5 votes for and 1 against. So that's carried.
Thank you, members. That concludes the business of this meeting. The meeting is going to close at 15:52. Our next overview and scrutiny meeting will be on Monday, the 16th of February at 10 a.m. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. Adrian?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can I just thank you